All right, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a story in the AI race that honestly isn't getting nearly enough airtime. While all the headlines are freaking out about the latest chatbot, the real game of who's going to dominate AI, well, it might be hiding in plain sight. So let's just ask it straight up. Who is really winning this thing? I bet your first thought is OpenAI, right? Maybe Anthropic. And hey, based on the news cycle, you wouldn't be wrong. But if we pull back the curtain, the story of who's actually going to control the future of computing is, well, it's a lot more complicated. You see it every single day, right? Headlines screaming about ChatGPT versus Claude. Which one can write a better sonnet? Which one can fool you into thinking it's human? This is the shiny front end, the part we all interact with. But focusing only on that, that's like judging the size of an iceberg by the tiny piece you see sticking out of the water. Because here's the absolute key. True long-term power in AI isn't about having the slickest chatbot right now. It's about owning the foundation. We're talking about the infrastructure, the data, and the distribution channels. That's where the real war is being fought, and it's where one company, a sleeping giant, is quietly building a fortress that might just be impossible to breach. And yep, that giant is Google. Its entire strategy is built around what analysts are calling an insurmountable moat. And this moat has three massive concrete pillars that we're going to break down right now. It's data, which is just unparalleled, its custom-built infrastructure, and its absolutely enormous built-in distribution network. Okay, so let's get into it. First, we'll look at the data moat that literally no one else can even come close to. Then we'll talk about their insane cost advantage on the infrastructure side. And finally, we'll see how their distribution network lets them push AI out to the world at a scale their rivals can only dream about. And this is where the scale just becomes mind-bending. We're not talking about a few million users here. We're talking about billions. Just look at these numbers. Every one of these products has billions of users. I mean, just think about what that data means. Search alone gives you 8.5 billion examples of what humanity is thinking, wanting, and needing every single day. YouTube is the planet's biggest library of video, audio, and text, all perfectly packaged for training AI. It creates this powerful, unstoppable cycle. More data makes the AI better, which makes the products better, which brings in more users, and yep, even more data. Okay, next up, the infrastructure moat. To get their models trained and running, companies like OpenAI have to go out and buy mountains of GPUs from Nvidia. The catch? Nvidia's gross margins are sitting at around 80%. This has become known as the Nvidia tax, or a tax on innovation. It means OpenAI is just burning through billions and billions of dollars on hardware they don't own at prices set by one single company. But this is where Google plays a totally different game. For more than a decade, they've been quietly designing and building their own custom chips called Tensor Processing Units, or TPUs. Because they make them in-house, they completely bypass NVIDIA's crazy markup. The results? A jaw-dropping 4 to 6 times cost advantage. Google isn't just a little bit cheaper. Its entire cost of doing business is in a different universe. So Google has this foundation of unbelievable data and super cheap infrastructure. But what are they actually doing with it? Well, they're unleashing an absolute onslaught of new AI products, turning all that foundational power into a market reality that is getting really hard to ignore. I mean, the pace of their releases has just gone into overdrive. It's so clear they're not just playing catch-up anymore. They're trying to redefine the entire game on multiple fronts, all at the same time. And just look at the sheer scope of these tools. They're shipping stuff at a dizzying pace. You've got Veo, which goes head-to-head with OpenAI's Sora for making video. You've got Genie, which is this totally revolutionary way to create interactive worlds to train AI agents in. That's a huge leap forward. Then there's Project Astra, their vision for a universal AI assistant that can literally see and understand the world through your phone. Imagen 4 is their play for best-in-class image generation, and the new Ironwood chip just shows they are doubling and tripling down on that custom hardware advantage. This isn't just about one chatbot anymore. This is a full-stack assault. And guess what? It's working. Big time. The number of developers building on Google's Gemini models has just exploded to over 7 million. That's a 5-fold increase in just 1 year. This is the third moat we talked about. Distribution. By getting the developers on board, they're building an ecosystem that's super sticky. More developers create a better platform, which in turn attracts even more developers. It's a classic, powerful, self-perpetuating flywheel. But this story doesn't even end there. Beyond the moats of data, infrastructure, and distribution, Google has a wild card, an ace up its sleeve. It's a breakthrough in a completely different field that could just rewrite all the rules of computation as we know it: quantum computing. So, for like 30 years, quantum computing has had this one massive show-stopping problem. Think of it like this. Building a quantum computer is like trying to build a perfectly soundproof room. The bigger you make the room, the more noise from the outside world just finds a way to leak in. Well, in quantum computing, those little qubits are incredibly sensitive to that noise, and it causes errors. So the more qubits you add to make it powerful, the more errors you get. This error correction problem has been the #1 roadblock. Until now. Google's new quantum chip, which they call Willow, has actually cracked this problem. It's shown that it can reduce errors as it gets bigger. And to give you some perspective on its power, Willow performed a calculation in under 5 minutes that would take the world's most powerful supercomputer 10 septillion years. I mean, try to wrap your head around that. That number is it's many, many times the age of the universe. This isn't just a small step forward. It's a reality-bending leap into the future. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some lucky accident. It's a critical milestone in a very deliberate, very long-term plan. Their target is crystal clear. They want a useful, commercially viable quantum computer by 2029. With this new breakthrough, they're on a 5-year path to potentially revolutionizing everything from drug discovery to AI model training itself. Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at OpenAI. Let's contrast Google's methodical long-term build with what's happening over there. Yeah, they're dominating the headlines, but their strategy looks less like a confident plan and more like a high-stakes, high-burn gamble, a desperate defensive move built on a foundation of completely unsustainable economics. Just let these numbers sink in for a second. Recently, for every single dollar OpenAI brought in, they lost almost 2. Their cash burn is getting faster and faster, projected to hit $8 billion this year alone. They're not even aiming for profitability until 2029. This isn't growing pains. This is a business model that's fundamentally broken. Every new user they get on board actually costs them more money than they make. So this existential threat is exactly why you're seeing all these crazy headlines about trillion-dollar deals. But they're not what they look like. A lot of these are what's called circular financing schemes. So for instance, Nvidia invests in OpenAI, but then OpenAI is forced to spend that same money buying Nvidia's chips. In reality, Nvidia is just loaning OpenAI the money to buy its own products, and in return, they get a slice of the company. It's a house of cards. And really, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have OpenAI, burning billions, renting their hardware, totally dependent on partners. On the other side, you have Google, hugely profitable, building its own hardware, owning its own data, and controlling its own distribution. These aren't just different strategies. These are two completely different worlds. Okay, so let's tie this all together. What's the endgame here? Well, Google's advantages aren't just sitting there, they're actively reinforcing each other. They're creating these compounding flywheels that are positioning the company for total long-term dominance with a massive, almost unfair upside. Just think about how these flywheels feed into each other. The data advantage makes for better models. The infrastructure advantage drives down costs, which frees up billions for R&D to make even better chips. The distribution advantage creates a sticky, self-growing ecosystem of developers. And then, just floating above all of it, you have the quantum wildcard, a potential game-over move with incredible upside. Each of these gears turns the others, and the whole machine just gets faster and stronger over time. You know, there's a quote from Delta Capital that just nails this whole thing. It says, "The opportunity is now, while Google is perceived as the boring incumbent rather than the AI infrastructure monopoly with quantum upside. The market is just seeing the flashy demos from OpenAI, but it seems to be missing the deep structural advantages we've been talking about, the economics, the data, and that quantum breakthrough. The opportunity is there because all these strengths are still kind of hiding in plain sight." So I'll leave you with this question. While everyone is distracted by the chatbot puppet show, is it possible that the market is completely sleeping on the giant that's actually pulling the strings? A giant that is now, very, very clearly, waking up. Thanks for tuning in.